Oval Office with the German Chancellor, and a lot to get to here, but the most interesting and perhaps important issue, political issue and policy issue, is what President Trump said about his now former friend, at least it seems, Elon Musk. And I want to go to Elena Treen at the White House. Elena, it seems as though we saw kind of the unraveling of a bromance real time. And what our viewers saw was what it turned out to be one side of a fight. The other side was Elon Musk real time using his platform X to respond and kind of push back on many of the things that President Trump said. We're going to show our viewers what happened, but I want you to kind of give a sense of what brought us to this extraordinary moment just a few days after he gave a big glowing goodbye to Elon Musk from the White House.
Yeah, it's not even a week, Dana, since we saw them both praise each other from the Oval Office days later now. And actually the first time reporters are actually having the opportunity to ask the president about this. Since that moment, we're now seeing this completely fraying relationship on full display. It's very remarkable given just how close I know, my colleagues here at the White House, and I know that the president and Musk have been for months now, really him being one of the president's favorite people on this White House complex. I want to give you a sense just of some of the key things I took away from the president's comments. Overall, though, I would note as well that his tone was strikingly somber when discussing this, and really you could see that it saddened him almost. You could see kind of the emotion in his tone and on his face as he was discussing this. He said, quote, "I've always liked Elon." He said I was very surprised. He said he would have rather had him criticize him directly rather than the spending bill that the president has been working tirelessly with his team to try and muscle through Congress. He said, and this to me was maybe the most notable quote from the president, he said, "Look, Elon and I had being a very key word here, had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore." He said he was very disappointed in Musk. He went on to add that Musk knew about the, quote, inner workings of the bill very intimately, and claimed that he only started to take issue with it and had a problem with it once he left the administration, but also once he learned of the breadth of the electric vehicle mandate, really the credits that are being revoked in this bill that, of course, could and will impact Tesla. We also did see, as you mentioned, Dana, Musk respond to this just moments ago on X. He had really been posting throughout the entire time the president was speaking, but then he did post, made this one post linking to a video of the president making these comments about him, and said, "Keep the EV mandates in the bill, but get rid of the pork and the rest of it." He said you could have an ugly big bill or a slim and beautiful bill. So clearly showing, actually at the top of that post,
What's
he
good,
said,
Taylor?
quote,
Welcome to the
whatever,
stream.
really showing, where he stands on this. All to say, I mean, if you just look at months ago, particularly leading up to him being in the White House, and then ever
This is
since,
wild that this is one of
the
our world
president,
leaders.
would parade Musk around Mar-a-Lago and his different properties with him, always had him by his side at the dinner table, has continued to allow him to walk into the Oval, unannounced whenever he wanted. This is very far from that, and it's very unclear now where this relationship is going to go.
Well, I think we're watching where it's going, and it's going pretty
It is
downhill
no
pretty
bueno.
fast. Elena, thank you so much. I am joined here by...
We're indeed watching where it's going, and it's going no bueno, chat.
some really terrific reporters, CNN's Kristen Holmes, Josh Jossie of the Wall Street Journal, Zolan Kanu-Youngs of the New York Times, and CNN's Kylie Atwood. Let's just start by recapping one of the comments that President Trump made about Elon Musk.
You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk, and even with the black eye, I said, "You want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, "No, I don't think so," which is interesting and very nice. He wants to be who he is, so you could make that statement too, I guess. Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're
What's
well
good,
anymore.
Lauren?
I was
Welcome to the
surprised
stream.
because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer.
He said wonderful.
The best thing.
He said very wonderful things about me. He always says wonderful things about me, that Elon. he's what a great guy until he's not. When he's not a great guy, we sure don't love him. That Elon.
He's worn the hat. Trump was right about everything, and I am right about the great, big, beautiful bill.
It's a great, big, beautiful bill that I'm right
And
about.
that's what this is all about right now. And I just want to make that clear to our viewers. I'm sure you understand that this relationship basically exploded yesterday when Elon Musk started really aggressively putting on his social media platform that this bill that he is desperate to get through the Senate after it passed the House is bad. He wrote, "Kill the bill," and many other things. And so you just saw the president say what we just heard. He said, people leave my administration, they love us, and then at some point they miss it so badly. Some of them embrace it, some of them become hostile. Trump derangement syndrome.
So this is really fascinating because as of yesterday at the exact same time, maybe a few hours later into the afternoon, I spoke to a number of Trump's top advisors who still were unsure of how he was going to respond to Elon Musk. There were still a lot of questions. He was raising questions with them as to, do you think this is just a business decision? Do you think he's lashing out at this because of these electric vehicle mandates? It's probably something he has to do now that he's leaving the government and it's all about the business. Obviously, Donald Trump likes to make things about money and business, kind of his way of saying, okay, maybe that's what he's doing here. He was angry when that first tweet came out 2 days ago during the briefing, but then he also had a lot of questions as to where this was coming from, because he did believe that Elon knew about the EV mandate. His team does believe that this is all about business, all about the EV mandate, that this is all about these credits that Elon Musk believes are unfair, which he actually
And
just
it's not
tweeted.
just that it's big and full of pork.
Right, it's not
and
pork, it's not what he's saying there. But I think the most telling thing about this is that clearly we've hit a new marker since then, which is we had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore, and I can tell you that members of Trump's team have reached out to Elon Musk, no response. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have not spoken.
Yeah, and this was bubbling, though, for several months. I mean, Trump had said publicly, repeatedly, that he and Elon are close and vice versa, but there's been lots of frustrations that have happened between the two men over political endorsements, over Elon trying to get a briefing of the Department of Defense, over China, over some of the other staff fights inside the White House. And Trump's team was ready to see Elon go. There's no doubt about it. Trump himself wanted to have an event on Friday and try to have an amicable breakup here, in part because Elon is such a wealthy donor. He's the richest man in the world. He filled hundreds of millions of dollars for this campaign. He is a political force to a large degree. He controls one of the main ways that Republicans communicate. I mean, these, unlike some of the relationships Trump has had, a breakup here could hurt him too. I mean, there really is a lot of caution here that I think his people are trying to navigate. Okay, where are we going from here? Because we're playing with live, live rounds.
This is what you were referring to. You see on the screen, this is a video of the two of them in the Oval Office, which, by the way, I don't want to let it go unmentioned that the president made fun of the black eye that Elon Musk had. I mean, that was very clear that he wanted to get that in there. But when it comes to the substance of what we're talking about here, I also want to underscore that they are kind of saying the quiet part out loud with regard to Elon Musk's business interests. And the fact that there was even a question inside the White House, maybe by the president himself, because he just said it in the Oval Office, that Elon Musk doesn't like this bill because it's not good for his business. The EV mandate, electric vehicle mandate, goes away. I mean, they're not even pretending that there's no conflict of interest here. And that was one of the things that Musk responded to on X Real Time. He said, false, this bill was never shown. Well, first he said, that's not about that. And then he said, false, this bill was never shown to me even once and was passed in the dead of night so fast that almost no one in Congress could even read it. That was in response to Trump saying he was disappointed with Musk because he knew the inner workings of this bill better than anyone sitting here.
You had the president in the Oval Office essentially say that Elon Musk's criticism is a matter of personal grievance. It's a matter of the fact that he thinks that this will hurt his business. Elon, up until this point, when he has shared criticism for this bill, has said that it's about undermining really the effort he took to cut federal bureaucracy, reduce the deficit as well. and he said that it's about sort of fiscal responsibility. Here you have the president completely saying that that is not true, and that it's really actually about somebody trying to protect his business, which is interesting also because Elon was with the administration when the Trump administration was rolling back EV subsidies that the Biden administration put forward as well. So that's another detail I add here. But it's remarkable to see here just the shift in the past couple days. I asked the president last Friday about reports of Elon Musk's drug use as well. And he went out of his way to say that that is not a concern, that is not troubling to him, that he still stands by Elon Musk. All of that now to this point where now you have criticism against a signature part of Trump's domestic agenda. And now he's saying, well, this is someone who's just worried about their
All right, we're going to take you
Let's
now to
move on and look at
Westwood.
more ice
Vice
raids.
President J.D. Vance, you see there, talking to members of the U.S. Marine.
There's a
Of course,
couple
he
of
is
updates that I need
a
to see on
veteran
this.
of the U.S. Marines. He is here in Los Angeles to take a tour of the Federal Joint Operations Center as well as the Federal Mobile Command Center, which is basically the command center for all of these ICE immigration raids that we have been covering for the past 2 weeks.
And this comes just on the heels of thousands of California National Guard troops basically hearing that they will be remaining under federal control today after the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with the Trump administration. So he may speak to that as well today.
And you see a podium set up there after he shakes the hands of those Marines. He will walk up to that podium and he will be delivering remarks, and it looks like that's about to happen right now. Let's listen in.
Everybody, thank you all for being here, and thanks especially to the Marines from 29 Palms for being here, for serving their country and providing some much needed security. As a matter of fact, I just heard from a couple of law enforcement officers, basically, thank you. Thank you to the president for sending in the DOD officials, for sending in the soldiers and Marines, because unfortunately a lot of these federal buildings were under very serious threat. I heard about a lot of that during my tour here today, and the reason I'm here is I just wanted to hear from the law enforcement officials themselves, the state officials, the local officials, but also the federal officials, what's actually going on here on the ground. I think there's some good news, and the good news is the rioting has gotten a lot better. But the bad news is, as I heard from everybody, unfortunately the soldiers and Marines are still very much a necessary part of what's going on here because they're worried that it's going to flare back up. And what do I mean when I say flare back up? I think it's useful to take stock of what actually happened in the city of Los Angeles over the past couple of months. So first of all, to set the table, we have a public official in Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who over the past few years have actively encouraged illegal migration into this community, have strained public services, have strained law enforcement, and really have offered generous benefits, not to American citizens, but to illegal immigrants to break the law, to come into our country, and to receive generous public assistance for having done so. What has that done? That has created an illegal immigration crisis, of course, facilitated by the policies of the Biden administration, and there is perhaps nowhere where that crisis has fallen harder than in the great city of Los Angeles. And, you know, I landed, when I saw this city, when I was driving through
That is
to come to
insane.
this FBI building, all I
It's
can think
insane
about
that
is
we have
what
the
a
National
great
Guard
American city Los Angeles
taking
is,
part in
and
this.
what a great tragedy it is that we have allowed illegal immigration and rioting to destroy, I think, one of the great gems of the American family. Now, these guys surrounding me represent the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And make sure
They
you guys like
represent,
this stream up, dude.
Immigration enforcement.
More
and
people
of
need
course,
to
we
see
just met
this.
some
Make sure you
Marines
guys like
who
this stream
represent
up.
the
Double
Department
tap
of
those
Defense.
screens.
All of these law enforcement officials were necessary because what happened is, in response to the basic federal action of enforcing immigration law, you had local officials and radical left-wing agitators who actually encouraged violence, who facilitated violence and rioting in the great city of Los Angeles. What happened here was a tragedy. You had people who were doing the simple job of enforcing the law, and they had rioters egged on by the governor and the mayor, making it harder for them to do their job. That is disgraceful. And it is why the president has responded so forcefully what happened in Los Angeles. Number one, because we've got to enforce our borders and get so many of these criminals out of our country to begin with. And number two, when you have violent agitators who make it impossible for the law enforcement to do their job, it is necessary to protect them and to defend them. We have to remember that the Friday that the riots started, before there was ever a single National Guardsman, before the President of the United States had sent in additional federal resources, you had law enforcement officers who were being captured and beaten by violent mobs egged on by Gavin Newsom and other officials. It was necessary to send the National Guard to stop that process, to bring some order back to this great city, and to make it possible for the people's president to enforce the people's immigration law. That's why we're here. That's why these guys are standing beside me. That's why we have close to 5,000 soldiers and Marines from the Department of Defense. It's because we've got to enforce
That is
the
just
law.
insane.
The president takes that very seriously. I'm happy to take a few questions, but before I do,
This
I
is
just want to
literally
address it
insane,
to
guys.
all of the law enforcement, local, state,
Look at
and
look at what it
federal,
looks like
who
there.
frankly I think are
This is in
suffering
America.
from a bit of a morale problem because they've had the local government in this community tell them that they're not allowed to do their job. I just want to let you know, from the president, the vice president on down, this administration stands with you. We're grateful for the job that you do every single day. We know that we wouldn't have a border were it not for your hard work and for your efforts, and we're going to keep on fighting for you and keep on standing with you every step of the way. I heard today Border Patrol officials tell me that they feel like the local government is sicking violent mobs on them when they go out to the community to enforce the nation's immigration laws. Can you imagine what it's like to be a federal official doing your job, doing the job the President of the United States ordered you to do, and have a mob come after you for following orders and for enforcing the American people's laws? I think it's disgraceful that we've ever gotten to this place in this country, but thank God we've got a president and an administration that is pushing back against lawlessness. We're going to keep on doing it every step of the way. So thank you to the Border Patrol. Thank you to the soldiers and Marines. Thank you to the U.S. attorneys. Thank you to the FBI. Thank you to all of you for doing what is necessary to enforce the laws of the American people. We are grateful to you, and we'll keep on fighting for you. Now I'll take a few questions.
Would you say that Gavin Newsom is endangering law enforcement here in California, and what should he be doing if he was protecting them?
Look, I would absolutely say that Gavin Newsom is endangering law enforcement. The law enforcement officials themselves tell me as much, that when they go out, let's say you have a Border Patrol official who needs to go out and arrest somebody, maybe a violent criminal who's also an illegal alien. When that Border Patrol agent goes out to do their job, they said within 15 minutes of them trying to do their job, they have protesters, sometimes violent protesters, who are in their face, obstructing them, preventing them from doing their job, and endangering their lives. Why do they have that? Because those people have been egged on by local officials. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, by treating this city as a sanctuary city, have basically said that it is open season on federal law enforcement. They have treated Border Patrol and border enforcement as somehow an illegitimate force instead of what they are, which is the American people's law enforcement trying to enforce the American people's laws. So when Gavin Newsom encourages violence and rioting, when he encourages people to get in the face of our great Border Patrol officers, he is absolutely endangering the lives of federal enforcement. He's absolutely endangering the lives of mothers and daughters and fathers and sons who have been sent here to do a simple thing: enforce the law. And thank God they're willing to do it despite the fact that the local leadership of this community has made it harder on them and has in fact endangered their lives as they go about to do their important work.
President, your reaction to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, their decision yesterday, I just want to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that for the past couple of weeks, Gavin Newsom has said that there's an illegitimate effort to send federal resources to secure a city that he refuses to secure. And what the Ninth Circuit said yesterday is that that was a completely legitimate and proper use of federal law enforcement. The president has a very simple proposal to everybody in every city, every community, every town, whether big or small. If you enforce your own laws and if you protect federal law enforcement, we're not going to send in the National Guard because it's unnecessary. But if you let violent rioters burn great American cities to the ground, then of course we're going to send federal law enforcement in to protect the people the president was elected to protect. And I think what the Ninth Circuit said very clearly is that when the president makes a determination that you've got to send in certain federal officials to protect people, that determination was legitimate, and the president's going to do it again if he has to. But hopefully it won't be necessary. We don't want to send these great Marines to cities like Los Angeles. We only do it if we have to protect federal property and to protect the lives of our great law enforcement folks.
Protesters, some of them funded by Democratic groups, troops who were releasing the addresses of ICE agents
Yes.
in hotels around here.
Well, you know, it just drives home. I was actually shocked to hear this, and I didn't realize this until I was in the command center earlier talking to some of these great officials, that oftentimes you have far left agitators who are posting the names, the addresses, even the family members of some of our law enforcement in an effort to harass them, antagonize them, and even threaten their lives. And what do I take from that? What I take from that is that you have a very small group of people who are so against the idea of border enforcement that they're willing to threaten and endanger the lives of their fellow Americans who are enforcing the law. And something else I take from it is that Gavin Newsom
What
and
you
Karen
said,
Bass
put,
have got
Gordon.
to stop this
What you
craziness.
said.
Every single law enforcement officer I talked to today, every single one of them said they feel like the local leadership, the mayor and the governor, are encouraging these far left agitators. What is the justification for this? What is the reason for this? There is a broad bipartisan consensus that we ought to have border enforcement and we ought to enforce our nation's laws. So why do you have far left agitators egged on by local officials who are encouraging these agitators to harass and to threaten our border patrol? You have it because of a lack of common sense. These people need to be stopped. These people need to be told that if you threaten a law enforcement officer, you're going to go to prison for it. And that's exactly what the Trump administration, that's the message that we're sending. But look, we could do so much better, and we could have such an easier pathway for these federal law enforcement officers if the local leadership wasn't egging this on. And I think that's the great tragedy. What I see here today is the great tragedy when a mayor and a governor encourages their citizens to harass and endanger the lives of our police officers and our law enforcement officers. It's heartbreaking to see, and thank God we've got great people who are willing to persevere despite it.
All right, we've been listening to Vice President J.D. Vance referencing the rioting that has been happening, and also the ICE raids that have been happening throughout Southern California, not just here in Los Angeles, and concerns in our communities. Also thanking law enforcement, local, state, and federal, and of course the Marines.
And he's directly going after Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass here in Los Angeles. He says that their actions have endangered law enforcement and has encouraged violence against law enforcement.
These are great questions,
We'll
chat.
be right back.
Chat, these are great questions. Why is the media not reporting the kidnappings? There's a lot of things that the media keeps out of reach from us. They're not going to show us half of the stuff that's going on.
Joining me now is former Yuma Sector Border Chief Chris Clem and former acting ICE Director and former acting Director of General Counsel at DHS, John Sandwig. Great to have both of you here.
Chat, I need some news sources.
I want to talk, these protests started because there was a lot of criticism of the ICE agents and their tactics.
Where are the actual raids? Does somebody have the actual raids?
But Tom Homan, the border chief, says those tactics are necessary to protect the agents themselves. Can you understand his point?
I do, Elizabeth. When you work at DHS, when you work at ICE, the number one rule is protect officer safety. Unfortunately, given how elevated, how passionate the concerns are about the immigration enforcement, the mass deportation effort, the individual agents face threats, and I'm very sympathetic to the notion that they need to take steps to protect themselves. That said, I mean, I think potentially we ought to take a hard look at this. Is it being overused? Do we need to get a policy in place that makes clear, that the masks will only be worn when there are credible threats to the agents? Probably. But the idea that officers and agents need to take steps to protect themselves and their families, I can never be opposed to that.
Chris, polls do show that American support for Trump's immigration policy is starting to wane. A new Fox News poll shows 53% disapprove of his handling of immigration. A Quinnipiac poll shows only 40% approve of these mass deportations thus far. The issue seems to be the deportations now seem more and more not of convicted criminals, but of farm workers and hotel housekeepers.
Well, I say that's because it's been the 24/7 cycle since it was brought to light a few weeks ago. If this is all you're seeing, it's all we're talking about, we're missing the actual tenets of the immigration policy set forth by this administration. Look, he campaigned on this, and he did this on day one, going after national security and public safety threats. We always knew that there'd be collateral damage along the way. every one of these arrests that are made are legal arrests with the authorities. I get it, the way it sometimes is framed, it doesn't paint a pretty picture, but at the end of the day, these are people that have broken our laws. Many of them had orders of removal and failed to do that. They have a lengthy criminal history, and they're in
When they say most, do you think they actually mean most?
What are they doing hanging out with criminals in the first place? So yeah, I'm sure there's a little more, expanding of the operations while they're there. But look, they're arresting people that are in the country illegally. And that's how you fix a broken immigration system, by holding people accountable and maintaining the integrity of the process.
Right, but John, a lot of those people don't have long criminal histories. That's what got these protests going, was the raids at Home Depot when they were picking up day laborers. We just heard President Trump this afternoon say yet again he's hearing from Republican lawmakers representing farmers and meat plant workers who are saying, wait a second, you've just arrested and deported 70, 80% of these farmers' workforce, or these plants' workers.
It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. There's unquestionably was a shift about 2 to 3 weeks ago where the White House was concerned about the numbers of arrests. That required ICE to make a shift in their tactics away from those more targeted arrests where they're, what happens is you spend weeks looking at a target. You find somebody who has a criminal history. They can be challenging to find, but agents spend hours behind the scenes building a targeting package. Then we send a team out to go get them. They might have to do more on the ground investigating before they find them. The problem is you make one single arrest and you've spent hundreds of agent hours making that arrest, but the quality of that arrest is very high. It could be a violent felon.
Right.
So you get this incredible impact. The administration wants a higher number of arrests. What that has forced the agency to do is do these indiscriminate operations at Home Depots, the day laborers, at worksite operations. The problem is you're just not likely to find your criminals there. You might find one or two, but most of your criminals are making a living off their gang activities or their criminal activities, not working hourly labor jobs. As this goes forward, it's going to be interesting to see how the public.
Everybody, make sure you double tap your screen. More people need to see this ASAP.
They have U.S. citizen children.
Double tap your screen. Let's get more people in here to look at this. It needs exposure.
Unfortunately, we rely on this undocumented labor. It's going to put pressure politically on the president, and it will just be interesting to see how long the administration can sustain this approach where you're doing these kind of mass arrests and not shift back to that more targeted approach focused on the criminals.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right.
We need footage from the ICE raids. I need to see some of the actual ICE raid footage. Where's the ones of them taking the day laborers?
Come on, let's be honest. Is that okay?
And more breaking news now at 11 o'clock. Several people are taken into custody at a Hollywood Home Depot as part of President Trump's federal immigration enforcement. Raids happened this morning outside at least 2 Home Depot locations, one in Sylmar and another here in Hollywood.
KTLA 5's Corrine Winter joining us now live from the Hollywood location with this breaking story. Corrine?
Well, according to officials, according to witnesses, they say officials who they described as ICE agents arrived at this Home Depot this morning and rounded up more than a dozen people. We're outside of that Home Depot. I just want to show you that gentleman over there in the turquoise shirt. He's one of the family members of those who was taken, arrived here. He's been very emotional talking to the media. His wife apparently is a food vendor who's out here every single day. And again, she was rounded up as part of the raid. But take a look at what went down hours ago here in Hollywood.
Corre!
That's insane.
And this is a location along Sunset and Western Avenue. There's cell phone video that you just saw. It captured the raids occurring at this Home Depot property. Also a few blocks away near Home Depot. This is all part of the crackdown we've seen this week and in recent weeks. President Trump's immigration enforcement efforts to detain those suspected of being in the U.S. illegally for possible deportation. Actions that have polarized communities here in the Southland and across the nation, with some arguing that these workers are trying to earn a living and are law-abiding people who are living here, others saying many undocumented individuals who have been detained have criminal records, and that the ones who still don't belong in this country given the Trump administration's mandate. Listen to what this witness told us. He provided KTLA with some of the cell phone video that you've been seeing. He wanted to remain anonymous.
Several people were running upwards Wilton's Place. I informed them that ICE agents were around the area. They were aware of that, and then that's when an SUV pulled up, came out, 2 agents tackled down a individual with no questions. They placed his face into the dirt, physically apprehended him.
And we reached out to officials for more details on today's raid. They said while they can't comment on every single operation, these raids continue on a daily basis, and that today's raid was routine federal immigration law enforcement operation. That's how they categorized it. But take a look at this statement. They're also advising the public to avoid assaulting and obstructing, interfering, impeding, or intimidating federal agents while conducting their immigration law enforcement duties, underscoring that anyone, U.S. citizen or not, can be arrested and face felony charges. I want to bring in now quickly Shobana Castillo. You're out here. We've been seeing the gentleman who's been very emotional. His wife was detained. He has no idea where she was taken. But you said some of the people detained today were also your neighbors.
That's right. My neighbors unfortunately got taken. They are not bad people. They are not criminals. They are hard workers. They came here for a better life because that's what the United States is about, right? You have freedom. You come here for a better life because unfortunately you run from countries, your own home. That's not the best, right? You come here looking for a better life. You come here for sanctuary. You come here to think that you're going to make it out here. But unfortunately, with these people coming and taking our own people, the people that constructed California, the people that work for California, the people who do a lot for us, right? They're taking them. What are you going to do when we're not here? What are you going to do when you have nobody left to work with?
And the woman you mentioned who was taken, she's pregnant?
She's actually pregnant. That's the saddest part. She's pregnant. She must have been scared. You don't know if this is going to cause you stress to her baby. You don't know if she might lose the baby from the shock.
Quick question, and I don't mean to come across as insensitive, but this is part of the Trump administration's mandate. The president making it clear that anyone who's here, who's not here legally, that this is going to be a part of the process, as inhumane as many may categorize it. There is another argument to that.
I feel like it's wrong. Like I said, they're saying that they're going to take everybody, but why everybody when you have actual criminals that were born here and who have done way worse stuff, and yet they don't get the same punishment we're getting? Why is that? I want an answer to that, seriously. Why is it that criminals can get away with so much who are born here, criminals, and yet our people are innocent? They're working hard. They're doing stuff to make it out here, right?
Thank you.
Of course.
The argument, you can see it's so broad, so far-reaching. We'll have so much more on this coming up throughout the day on the KTLA 5 News. For now, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
I mean, it's crazy, dude. It's crazy to see some of the raids take place, like kind of what it actually looks like when they bring these people in. I just know that there's a big divide.
Responding to
big
comments
divide.
made today by Vice President J.D. Vance here in Los Angeles.
And spewing lies and utter nonsense in an attempt to provoke division and conflict in our city. This is consistent with the provocation from Washington that began 2 weeks ago, when our city was calm and millions of Angelenos were going about working and contributing to our city. The provocation has resulted in lives disrupted, terror and fear spread throughout our city. I spent the day today meeting with businesses. We met on Sunday, and businesses were empty, owners were suffering, and describing this situation as worse than COVID. Just think for a minute how profound that is. Workers who are too afraid to come into work, and customers who feel they can't go outside their house. I also met with mothers who do not know where their husbands are and their sons. They told me about their children who spent Father's Day wondering why their fathers did not come home. And I just want you to know that that's a trauma to a child that child will always carry with them. Unfortunately, the Vice President did not take time to learn about our city and understand that our city is a city of immigrants from every country and continent on the planet. But then again, he did need to justify the hundreds of millions of wasted taxpayers' dollars that were wasted in the performance of a stunt and an experiment in this city, and using men and women of our armed services whose mission it is to protect our country. He accused state leaders and myself as mayor of this city of encouraging violence, of sicking mobs on ICE officers. But let me just tell you, like yesterday, what happened at the Dodgers, we're not sure who these armed men are. They show up without uniforms. They show up completely masked. They refuse to give ID. They're driving regular cars with tinted windows, and in some cases, out-of-state license plates. Who are these people? And frankly, the vests that they have on look like they ordered them from Amazon. Are they bounty hunters? Are they vigilantes? If they're federal officials, why is it that they do not identify themselves? You can imagine the fear and the terror that that has created in our city. When you have cars driving around, people jumping out of those cars with guns and rifles and pulling people off the street. How dare you say that city officials encourage violence? We kept the peace. You know that the federal officials that were here protected a federal building. They were not involved in crowd control. Crowd control was handled most aptly by the Los Angeles Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and local law enforcement. We were able to handle the violence and the vandalism that occurred. We put a curfew in place. We've lifted that curfew. Our streets have been peaceful, and even when there was vandalism at its height, you are talking about a couple of hundred people who were not necessarily associated with any of the peaceful protests. And for those of you who are watching outside of Los Angeles, I will say it over and over again, Los Angeles is a city that is 500 square miles. And any of the disruption that took place in about 2 square miles in our city. The most, over 100 people were arrested. We are a city of 3.8 million people. And finally, Mr. Vice President, how dare you disrespect our senator? You don't know his name, but yet you served with him before you were vice president, and you continue to serve with him today, because the last time I checked, the Vice President of the United States is the President of the U.S. Senate. You serve with him today, and how dare you disrespect him and call him Jose? But I guess he just looked like anybody to you. Well, he's not just anybody to us. He is our senator. And you fly in, you parachute in the city. I don't know if you've ever been here before. You parachute in the city, you pass all kinds of judgment, and then you leave. And you add to the provocation, you add to the division, or you attempt to create division.
I want to catch some more of the actual footage.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, is back.
What?
Former president making a rare public appearance in Connecticut last night, telling the audience that the U.S. constitutional order is in real danger.
We start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy. It is consistent with autocracies. We're not there yet completely, but I think that we are dangerously close to normalizing behavior like that.
And while former President Obama spoke, the current president was contemplating joining a new Middle East war against Iran, all while American troops remain deployed here on his orders on U.S. soil in the state of California against the wishes of the state's governor. In fact, they are there, according to the Secretary of Homeland Security, to, quote, liberate the state from its elected leaders. But there aren't even any disturbances on the streets there patrolling. You remember those Waymo cars that got burned? We all saw the images, right? That was a week and a half ago. Yet we still have 700 U.S. Marines and more than 4,000 National Guard soldiers deployed to America's second largest city. That is after Donald Trump ordered another 2,000 guardsmen to L.A. late last night. We'll see how much that's going to cost. That's even though the LAPD told reporters there had not been any arrests related to protests in the city since Saturday night. And it's not just California. Yesterday, the Pentagon also announced that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is mobilizing 700 troops to assist federal immigration officials in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas.
Jeez.
Now, it seems pretty clear to me at this point that all this is to terrorize American citizens and non-citizens alike, and to transform the structure of American governance and our relationship to our own armed forces, to normalize federal occupiers with guns. Some identified, some not, some masked. People that can at any moment just arrest a sitting U.S. senator or a New York City controller, members of Congress, a mayor of Newark. I mean, Trump has always wanted to use American military force against Americans, at least as far back as back in 2020, famously during the George Floyd protests. But at the time, his defense secretary said, more or less, absolutely not. And a big part of the reason that Trump is doing it now, and it is happening now, they're still in California, right, is that he has this almost sort of comically pliable Secretary of Defense in former Fox Weekend host Pete Hegseth, a man who is just obviously palpably in over his head, but will do whatever Trump wants. And today, testifying before the Senate Armed Services Committee, the man who oversees the largest and most lethal organization in the history of the United States answered serious concerns from senators with a deeply disturbing made-for-Fox shtick.
On Sunday night, the president threatened to deploy ICE agents to other cities around the country that he sees as, quote, the core of the Democrat power center, end quote, specifically mentioning Chicago and New York. Secretary Hegseth, if the president wanted to deploy Marines to Chicago and New York City like he did in Los Angeles, would you carry out that order even if the local governors and mayors objected?
Well, thankfully, New York City, unlike California, unlike Gavin Newsom, is willing to step up and address the issue with their local law enforcement.
I will take that as a yes. How about if the president says he wants to send troops to 15 cities? Would you be willing to do that?
Well, Senator, I don't accept your hypothetical because
That's a hypothetical.
Not a real
That's
one.
the question. You're the Secretary of Defense. Would you send troops to 15 cities if the president said do it? Would you do it? 15 cities.
Again, Senator, it's a complete hypothetical lacking any context at all.
I mean, it was not hypothetical. I mean, Senator Elizabeth Warren repeated that Donald Trump posted that he wanted to do that, and Hegseth refused to answer whether he would carry out such an order. And then it got worse, because Hegseth was also asked about the situation that his predecessor, Mark Esper, faced in 2020 when Trump wanted the military to crush protesters.
What specifically was he suggesting that the U.S. military should do to these protesters?
He says, can't you just shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something. And he's suggesting that that's what we should do, that we should bring in the troops and shoot the protesters.
The commander-in-chief was suggesting that the U.S. military shoot protesters.
Yes, in the streets
American
of our nation's
protesters.
capital.
Remember that? Well, today, Pete Hegseth pretended it never happened.
Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniform military.
Dude, she's
to do
chopping
something
this
that
man
I know
up.
my gut isn't right. He was asked to
That's
shoot at their
crazy.
legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country. who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against honor? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh my God.
Now, as dangerous and sort of supercilious and glib and as that all seems, the military is just one part of what Trump is trying to do, right? Another part is this militarized federal police force. Those aren't active duty soldiers, but they're law enforcement officers, the federal government, who are indistinguishable visually from soldiers in their uniforms, and their weapons, their operations. And I want you to look at this. I don't know if people have seen this. I don't think it's gotten the attention it should. Here's what those kinds of operations look like when they're being deployed, not in a foreign war, not against some enemy of the United States, being deployed on the ground against us, against Americans, right? Our neighbors and communities. This is an open-air flea market in Los Angeles County, a flea market. The masked men carrying M16s in full camouflage battle rattle are not military service members. They are officers of ICE and the Border Patrol. They look like they're in a mission overseas. And they and their helicopters flying overhead executed a raid on, wait for it, the Santa Fe Springs swap meet on Saturday afternoon. The swap meet. They were there at the swap meet, hours before a Mexican-themed concert was set to begin. Now, the concert was canceled. Patrons and sellers scattered. The community and the market ground to a halt. One vendor said the masked armed agents were asking people where they were from in America. You're going to a swap meet, and someone with an assault rifle and camouflage is asking you where you're from. If you think that has all the hallmarks of an authoritarian, un-American police state, wait till you see how the Border Patrol portrayed that same raid in a hype video posted on their official social media. Again, that was to go to a swap meet. Celebrating a militarized police force raiding and interrogating flea market patrons, asking where they're from, with guns and with masks. This is the kind of America that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller are trying to impose, and what millions and millions who took to the streets this weekend are determined to resist.
That's literally insane. Let's see what the cartel thinks about Donald Trump.
Right now we're just racing through town following this group of volunteer paramedics on that motorbike.
Ya no aguanto con este brazo, yo, güey. Si te lo quito te vas a sangrar.
Dang, bro.
Tiene una hemorragia y pues es considerablemente mortal. Aquí, deténgame.
This area is very heavily populated by cartel members, and right now this guy is losing a lot of blood, so it's a bit of a race against time.
Holy
Esto
crap.
es riesgoso para nosotros porque la ambulancia ya tardó mucho y nosotros nos estamos exponiendo aquí.
Violence erupts almost every night here in Sinaloa, Mexico, the heartland of one of the most powerful criminal gangs in the world, the Sinaloa cartel. Once led by the notorious drug lord El Chapo, this cartel is responsible for selling huge quantities of drugs to U.S. consumers.
The cartels are waging war in America, and it's time for America to wage war on the cartels, which we are doing.
President Donald Trump is pressuring Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to crack down on the cartels, threatening tariffs and even military strikes. In response, hundreds of soldiers have already been added to the troops here in Sinaloa. We've come here to understand what that looks like. From hidden drug labs and defiant cartel members
Está fea la situación.
to grieving families and soldiers on the front line.
We're with the Mexican military right now, flying over the state of Sinaloa, over this massive expanse of rural land, looking for any signs of cartel activity.
This is more cannabis than I've ever seen in my life. The scale of drugs here is just enormous. I mean, this is a whole field of marijuana here. These guys are going to be camped up here for the next few days.
That's where I'm trying to work, not gonna lie
trying
to you,
destroy
Jack. Yes,
field
sir.
upon field of cannabis, of poppies. So is this area safe?
Yes, secured area. We need to make aerial reconnaissance and then vehicle and then on foot. And here is the poppy field.
Oh, wow.
So they slice the poppy to get the opium, and they start the process to get heroin.
So how much heroin does a field like this produce?
2 kilos.
2 kilos. The soldiers burn the poppies and marijuana. But it's synthetic drugs that are responsible for most of the 87,000 Americans who've died of overdoses in the space of a year. These drugs, like fentanyl and meth, can be produced in much bigger quantities, generate enormous profits, and are easier to hide.
Los criminales construyen estas áreas de trabajo en lugares lo más inaccesible para que la autoridad no los descubran.
I can smell it from here. It's very strong.
Sí. Bueno, vemos acá, esta es un área de concentración, aquí tienen los productos químicos. Vienen, trabajan 2-3 horas, producen 50, 20, 50 kilos, 100 kilos de metanfetamina, terminan y se van y se llevan la producción. Este laboratorio ya no va a ser reubicado a otro lado, lo que hay aquí se va a destruir ahora mismo.
In the first 6 months of Sheinbaum's presidency, thousands of suspected cartel members have been arrested, and more than 140 tons of drugs have been seized. But the reality is, more than 1,200 people have also been killed in Sinaloa in the past year. Hundreds more have disappeared. An uncomfortable fact for the Mexican military. In downtown Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa, the military's narrative that they are fully in control begins to unravel.
The rates of violence are still extremely high here. And since September, when this war between two factions of the Sinaloa cartel exploded, people have been dying on a daily basis. Very stark reminders here of people who are missing, who've been disappeared as part of this cartel war between the two factions that's playing out right now. All very recent cases. This was last week, 23-year-old went missing.
Those you cannot say if they are real.
What do you mean?
Those fires are old.
No, this is post the date here. This is the 22nd of March, they went missing, right?
Sí, pero, o sea, esto es una copia. It's a copy. Who put this? We don't know.
As we're talking, a soldier blocks our camera.
You mean it's not verified? Yeah. Presumably people aren't just putting up posters for the fun of it. They're putting them up because they're missing family members, right?
I don't know.
What's up? You don't want us filming it?
The military steer us off and invite us to film something else. But we call the number on the poster of the missing woman. Her name is Vivian Esporo. Her family tell us she disappeared 17 days ago. We promised to follow up on her story. But who are the men running this criminal network, wreaking havoc on people living here? We part ways with the military. So we've just entered an area of the city that is still very dangerous. After weeks of trying, our contact here on the ground has managed to secure a meeting with a member of the cartel who's involved apparently in the production of drugs. And so we're meeting him now in somewhere around here in an undisclosed location.
¿Cómo estás?
This man is talking to us on the condition we hide his identity and location.
Can I pull up a chair?
He says he produces fentanyl for the Sinaloa cartel. How safe or dangerous is this area to be in?
En estos momentos todas las áreas son peligrosas.
The Mexican military are making a big effort to crack down on the drug production here. How are you responding to that, and how does that impact your work?
Están haciendo un buen trabajo, pero pues como ellos vienen más, pues uno tiene que buscar la forma de seguir trabajando, claro, en baja escala, ¿entiendes? Pero no igual como antes, pero se sigue haciendo.
I mean, according to the Trump administration, you are a terrorist. I mean, the cartels have been labeled a foreign terrorist organization. What do you make of that?
Está fea la situación, ¿verdad? Está fea la situación, pero pues todos tenemos que comer.
What's your message to Donald Trump, if he's watching this?
Mis respetos, él tiene que según él, buscar lo mejor para los suyos. Pero el detalle que ya están los consumidores, ¿no? Si no hubiera consumidores, pues uno le parara.
There is a lot of violence playing out on these streets here at the moment every day, right? I mean, people are dying on a daily basis. Children are afraid to go to school. Do you have any sense of remorse over your role and your involvement in this group?
Claro que sí. Claro que sí. Creo que sí. Pues está triste la cosa,
of course.
Pero pues está triste la cosa, pero está temblando mucho esta madre.
His phone is pinging. Someone is nearby. He tells us we need to leave for our own safety. It's because of the actions of cartel members like these that civilians too are caught up in this violence. Vivian Aspuro, the missing woman from the poster, was one of them. Her body has just been found. I'm so sorry for your loss, I really am. Are you able to tell me a little bit about your sister?
Fue una niña feliz, tuvo todo lo que siempre quiso, fue muy amada. Le gustan mucho los gatos, Harry Styles, Lady Gaga. Íbamos a ir a su concierto juntas, ahora ya no.
I mean, there has been, there's massive escalation in violence here over the last few months with this conflict taking place. Do you feel like your sister's death is related to that?
Sí, creo que no creo que ella no se metió con ninguna persona peligrosa, pero la violencia que está azotando aquí en Culiacán dio pie a que esto pasara porque pues antes había códigos y se respetaban a las mujeres y a los niños.
I mean, the authorities are saying that they're going after the bad guys, they're making a lot of arrests, they're going after the drugs, they're going after the weapons. Do you feel like they're not doing enough?
No están haciendo nada. Culiacán se ha vuelto un lugar del que es imposible vivir.
Thank you for talking with us. You're being so strong. She'd be so proud of you.
Muchas gracias, en serio.
Thank you.
Gracias a ustedes por darle visibilidad a mi hermana.
For Vivian's family, the authorities' efforts amount to nothing more than anguish.
It's insane, guys. We've taken in a lot of information in this stream. There's a lot of crazy shit happening in this world right
Sometimes the most shocking corporate misconduct is hidden in plain sight, invisible to the naked eye.
I want to check out maybe one more ice raid video, and then we're probably gonna call it for the night. Let's see what we got on the chopping block. The Omega Meat Plant. Omaha Meat Plant.
Earlier this week, federal immigration agents detained dozens of people in a worksite raid in Nebraska. The Department of Homeland Security said it was the largest such operation in the state during the Trump presidency. Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon said 75 to 80 people were detained in the raid.
That's a lot.
ICE released this video showing agents entering a meat production plant in Omaha, owned by Glen Valley Foods. The company's president, Chad Hartman, later told Reuters that the agents had a warrant that they said had identified 107 people they believed were using fraudulent documents. While local police in Omaha said they were given advance notice about the raid, Glen Valley said it caught them by surprise. Hartman says he followed the rules for immigration status. However, when he told a federal agent that the plant had been using E-Verify, a federal database used for checking employees' immigration status, he says the agent told him the system was broken and urged him to contact his local congressional representative. After ICE agents gathered workers in the plant's cafeteria, the video shows them transporting detainees away from the site in an unmarked bus and arriving at a processing center where they were shackled and searched. The Omaha raid came amid ongoing protests in Los Angeles over similar operations that began in the city late last week. Migrant advocates there said ICE agents arrested migrants at LA Home Depot stores, a garment factory, and a warehouse. The agency has been intensifying efforts in recent weeks to deliver.
Again, absolutely crazy what's going on, chat. That's enough processed in for me tonight. Thank you guys for joining me. If you stuck around the whole time, really appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys on the next one.